Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. It has been a whole year now since I installed my Backsplash, and due to the unconventional nature of my installation, I wanted to give some of you out there a bit of an update. Now you might be thinking that a year is not much time for an update on tiling, and you would be correct. However, due to the atypical nature of my installations, I thought some of you out there might be wondering how it was going. So, let's have a look. Now, obviously, there were some naysayers out there, and understandably so. This is a not tried and true way of installing tile. So, of course, you're going to have people questioning it or thinking I'm just an idiot for doing it in the first place. And obviously, it was a bit of a risk on my part. I still don't know really how well this is going to work out in the long run, but I'm hoping for the best. And some of you out there seemed genuinely interested in potentially using something like this for your own home. So hopefully this can give you a little bit more info on just the longevity of this product. Now again, I know it's only a year, it's not that long, but again, hopefully this can give you a little bit of something if you're still kind of on the fence about it. All right, that should be enough of an intro. Before we get started, please like, subscribe, hit the bell stuff, do all the things for me if you feel like being generous today. All right, let's get started. If you didn't watch my previous video, I'll link it up here in the top corner. If you did, you'll recall that I used this blue foamy sticky stuff. Now, it's not actually blue, that's just the paper cover that you have to peel off. But you'll obviously recall that I used this stuff instead of mortar on my walls. Now, I did this for a couple reasons. One, my schedule. I thought this would just work better for me in my schedule and how many hours I had at a time generally to do some stuff, evenings after work and things like that. This was just easier, I thought, in my mind, than mixing and installing mortar. Now, there's some people out there telling me that mortar is easier and faster, which I highly disagree with, because I assume some of you think I've just never used mortar before, and that's why I did this. No, I've used mortar many times with tiles. Hence the reason I kind of went with this in the first place, because I know how it is to use mortar on walls especially. And rather than making a huge mess on my counters and having to take the time to mix and then clean and do all this stuff with buckets and tools, I just thought this would be so much faster and easier and just work much better with my schedule. And I think it did. Now, as I showed in my first video, before I installed this stuff, I went through and I sanded my walls wherever this was going to be. That wasn't in any instructions to do that. I just wanted to do that for my own peace of mind, to just give the walls a little bit more grit, get rid of some of the texture, to give this stuff a flatter surface to hopefully adhere better to. Now, this stuff isn't too hard to install. It kind of depends on your situation and how much stuff you have to work around. Now, one thing I wish they would do is make the total width of this stuff a more typical height between your countertop and your cabinets, which I believe is generally, like what I have, is about 18 inches. It would make a lot more sense to me if this whole roll would span basically just about the entire height of this space. You could stick it right in a corner and just take it as far as you could go on that wall. I think that would make it much faster, much easier than having a 12-inch roll. Something else that I think could really improve upon this is to actually have, because this blue is just a film to cover the sticky side of the tape. Now, I think it would be so much easier to install if you had that paper cover on both sides of this tape, because it's obviously double-sided foam tape to stick to the wall and then stick to your tile. If you had that paper on both sides, it would make it so much easier for layout and setting things up, and then you could just kind of peel the back side as you stuck it to the wall. Unfortunately for this particular brand, which is Deco Matte that I got from my local Menards, once you pull this off, the sticky side is exposed, and you got to get it on the wall and try not to mess up, because if you do, this stuff really does stick hard. So if you kind of screw something up and have to rip a big section back off, you might just have to throw that piece away, because I don't know how much I would want to trust the adhesive again after that. So one thing I did to hopefully alleviate some of that, if I did encounter that situation, was to just not press hard as I went along, to just kind of get it set in place, and then once it was good and set, then I would come back with my roller and I'd really press it on there good and hard. Because there were a couple times for me where I did have to actually pull it back a little bit, but thankfully I hadn't pushed it and pressed it on there much up to that point, so it came off easily, and I was okay with my adhesive still on the tape. So let's go back and talk about this stuff compared to mortar and why I chose this. Mortar is obviously very good at what it does. It creates a very strong and very lasting bond. But mortar is also very messy, particularly when installing on vertical surfaces like this. And I just really didn't want to have to deal with that on my countertop. And like I said about my schedule, with mortar you have to mix everything, you have to mix a certain amount, make sure you're not doing too much or it's just gonna end up wasted. Now for some of you pros out there who do this stuff on a daily basis, yeah, you might be able to do vertical surfaces cleanly, quickly, and efficiently. But I'm not that. So I had to do what was best for me in my situation with my schedule. And my schedule allowed me to install this stuff as I was able. And I could install however much I was able to do on any given night and then just leave it there. I didn't have to worry about anything because this paper is still on there. The adhesive is still covered up. I don't have to worry about anything happening to it or it going bad for sitting too long. It's just there, ready to go for me when I actually get some tile cut and ready to install on the wall. I didn't have to deal with mixing mortar and only having a certain amount that I was able to do at any given time and then having to clean my buckets and tools every single night. This worked much better for me. And it might work much better for some of you out there, but that's just a decision you guys have to make. Hopefully this gives you some insight into how well it worked out for me. Now obviously the longevity aspect of this remains to be seen, but after a year, I'm still going strong, so I'm happy about that. Another thing to think about with this stuff though is because this in and of itself isn't as strong of a bond as mortar is, whereas mortar you put it up and that's the tile's there. It's good to go. You don't have to do anything else and the tile will be fine and stuck on the walls. You're just gonna fill it with grilled. You're just gonna fill it with grout because it's ugly otherwise. But this stuff I think might need to work a little more in tandem with the grout. The grout kind of becomes a more integral part of the system. So once you get the tiles installed, I wouldn't wait too long before installing the grout. That I think will just help to ensure nothing can work its way back there and start to mess with the bond between the tile and the adhesive backing. Which I guess leads us right into grout. So what I did for grout isn't really important to this particular system. You could use whatever grout you wanted, but just in terms of ease of use and cleanup and things like that, I just went with some ready-to-use pre-made grout. It costs a little more, but it was just a lot easier. Cleanup of the grout obviously is no different. That's all the same. It still makes a mess on the counter. You got to clean everything up. But I don't have any of my tools to then clean and buckets and worry about that stuff after the fact. So this, for me, just worked out better because it was easier. I just opened this up, started to go to town. I also built and installed these window frames. Now this obviously has nothing to do with the tile, but I did do this as part of just the same project. And a year later, these are holding up really well too. And since it has been a whole year, I've obviously finished them and fastened them to the walls. Hold on. No, turn that off! I finish jobs when I start them, mostly. So just in terms of how it's holding up, everything's fine. I've actually gone around and pressed along the walls everywhere just to see if there's any potentially loose spots, and I found absolutely nothing. Everything feels just as good and solid as it did a year ago. Now it shouldn't be hard to know that something like this is not going to be approved for all locations. You obviously would not use this in a shower. And I don't know if I would use it in a bathroom at all, just due to the moisture in the air whenever you do take showers. That regular exposure to high amounts of humidity and moisture in the air may start to mess with the bond between this tape and the tile, and I don't know if I would want to take that risk. But a backsplash or any sort of wall in a dry location, I think is honestly fine, which is why I chose to do it here. Now there are other brands of this stuff. I think every big box store has their own brand. I don't know if any one of them is better than the other. Most of the stuff I get is usually from Menards. That's just because it's closest to me. But the other ones may work out just as well, you know, maybe even better than this stuff, I don't know. But I think that's all I have to say about that. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. Well, thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the stuff, feel free to ask me. If you got something out of this video, if you're liking the content, please like and subscribe to the channel. But other than that, I think we're all done here. Have a good day, guys. God bless. Hey, alright, I'm back. If you liked that video, I think you would definitely like this one over here. And probably particularly this one. I think you'd really like that because YouTube says you would. And YouTube knows all.